Thank you for jumping in. Today's session 3, Cultural Context and Pathways to Healing, DV 101 for Hawaii. Okay, I'm really excited to introduce our speakers for today. Dolly Tatofi is divinely guided by Kupuna, driven by Kuleana, and carries forward the S's of Awomo Ho'omanawa Nui. Her acquired Ike consists of a bachelor's in ethnic studies and a master's in social work from the University of Hawaii at Manoa, and she continues her learning at Chaminade University. Dolly is a founding member and the interim executive director of Pohana o Nawahine. She serves as the IVAT subcommittee cultural chair, enjoys sharing her love of Oli with others, and creates space for people to remember the sacred beings that they are. Through her years of experience, she has found the importance of aloha as the underlying factor in her hana. Be, do, and know aloha. Our second speaker is Keali'i Makamana'o Nalani, Shannon Parker Po'oloa, who is a technical and training assistant specialist with Pohana o Nawahine. Keali'i, or Kea as her family calls her, is a social worker, artist, and cultural practitioner with extensive experience in indigenous birthing with Kala Hui Okapo, breastfeeding, La'au Lapa'au, women and women's health and domestic violence. Kelly is currently the board president for Wisdom Circles Oceania Boards of Director and the treasurer for Hui Ohana o Ka'umeke Ka'eo Board of Directors. She has illustrated and developed numerous graphics, curricula, and a children's book. She enjoys being with her family and loves to draw, paint, read, and tend to her garden. She lives in Hilo, Hawaii with her husband Akamu and their 3 children, Tamateo, Kahili, and Kalei Lehua. Without further ado, I would like to hand it over to Dali and Keli'i for their presentation. Mahalo all.
Aloha. Aloha mai kako. Um, Dolly, did you want to also say aloha?
Oh yeah, I'm fixing my hair at the same time. So aloha to everybody. Uh,
Okay,
yeah.
we're gonna pull up our presentation. Okay. Um, so without further ado, we are really excited that there are so many of you. And I was just watching the chat as Maka was talking and see that a lot of you are from many different parts of America and all over. So that is really, really cool. And also, of course, I see a lot of people from Hawaii as well. And I wanted to I want to begin today because we are going to be talking about some things that are hard to hear. We're going to be talking about things that are deeply rooted, painful things. I want to create a safe space. I want to make sure that as we enter this space, that we do so with the right heart and the right intention, and that we open up our own selves to be receiving this knowledge um, with all that you can receive this knowledge with. So if I may, I'm gonna just sort of do what we call a virtual aloha circle. And I saw already that a lot of you were putting where you're from, saying good morning, saying where you're from and who you are. But if you don't mind, also now putting in the chat, all 200 and something of you, my goodness. If you could, I would love to know your name. So please bring your name and bring the name of where you are from. That can be where you slept last night. That can be a place that is very important to you. And I would also really like you to bring an ancestor, somebody who has passed on or is still here, just someone of very significance that has been a teacher to you, somebody that you hold dear to you, and you would like them with you during this time. So we're going to call that name forward as well. And hearkening back to the places that you're from, if you could also share the names, if you know it, if you know the name of the place you're from. What is the indigenous name? What is the name of your wind, if you know that? The name of your rain. What is the rain that feeds you? Where does your water come from? You can call the river where it comes from. So I'll demonstrate. Like Maka introduced me, my name is Keali'i Makamana Onalani, but you can call me Keali'i or Kea, which is a nickname, and that my family and loved ones call me. I am calling from Hilo, Hawaii, and Waiakea, and we call this area Hilo Hanakahi. The waters that feed me is my water that I drink out of my faucet comes from the Wailuku River that comes from Mauna Awakea, our highest altar and piko to us as Kanaka. My Oneha now, or the sands of my birth, is Puli'o'o on the island of Oahu, where I was born and raised, and where most of my family still lives. And the wind there is called Pu'uokona, also the name of the rain. And that area is also known as Mauna Lua, and it was once home to one of the largest local ia'as in Hawaii, and it was Kuapa. So, and the ancestor I want to bring, well, she's my mother. I would like to bring my mom with me to this space. Her name is Nara Nalani Stillman Parker Weatherwax, and she passed away in 2019. But she is my rock. I hule to her often. She is one of the most ferocious domestic violence survivors that I was blessed to know and grow up with. So please go ahead and do that. And then to also create the safety of this space, I just wanted to Oli to ask Akua and ask Akua to grant us knowledge. This Oli is a simple one. It's a one used often, e mai. It's simple yet not simple if you know. And this Oli just it not just asks, but it demands that knowledge be given. So we are here in this space for this, for us to learn today from one another, and going to Oli Ehomai to create our cultural safe space. Ehomai ka ike mai luna mai e, o na mea huna no e au, o na mele. Ehomai, 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 ka ike mai luna mai e, o na mea huna no e au, o na mele. Ehomai, 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 ka ike mai luna mai, o na mea huna no e au, o na mele. Ehomai, Ehomai, Ehomai. And then if you could breathe in really deep with your feet as flat to the ground as you can. Just in one big breath. We call this hanu. So you're gonna hanu in and then release on hanu. Hanu. So at any time you feel triggered, I would like you to evoke that deep breath, hanu, and releasing that with ha. Clear out the noise in the head, clear out all the swirling extra oxygen in there, and expel that as deeply and profoundly as you can. And then to close our pule, just 2 claps. Ew. Mahalo, mahalo for letting me also ground myself, because I do that for you, but also for me. And I do feel a whole lot better. So welcome to Cultural Context and Pathways to Healing, DV 101. Today, this is what we call our ka'ina. A ka'ina is just basically what we're going to be going through and like our chapters. So we're going to talk about why culture matters. We're going to go over Kanaka Maoli influences. By influence, I'm going to be basically what influenced our people, the history, a deep dive into the history, local Hawaii and geographical culture, Western and Hawaii norms, key data points, traditional healing approaches, and service needs and gaps. And as Maka had mentioned, please, you have questions. We are gonna have a good time after this presentation to go over them, and I'll do my best to answer them. Okay, so why culture matters. And so culture, as jurists, as I know that as professionals, I know what you see before you every day. And in Hawaii, we are a multicultural melting pot of different ethnicities that are all living together, going to school together, intermarrying. And over time, these cultures have blended together and they have created a melting pot of mixed cultures. So I'm sure you've heard of Pidgin, which is how all of our languages have kind of melded together. And we all have different ideas and different traditions, but in Hawaii, it's so unique because we are able to all live with that different, these different traditions and these different ideologies and still get along. Not something you see too often. So one thing culture dictates is not just traditions, but mindsets and societal norms and behavior. So our one thing as Kanaka we grew up with that's a very important understanding is of respect. So in Hawaii, in Olelo Hawaii, in our language, respect means kuleana. Kuleana and respect can differ across different across the different cultures. Like in Hawaii, it is our culture to go up and honi somebody hello, kiss on the cheek, we hug. Other cultures, that's not really acceptable. You may not make eye contact, or you might make eye contact. Some value a firm handshake, and while others, it's never showing up empty-handed, never coming anywhere without bringing a gift, a makana, something to share, to eat. Greeting our kupuna is first and foremost very important, and this is one of the just built in and married into our everyday life is how we've viewed culture, view our traditions. And as a result, our cultural context is very unique to our domestic violence response. Small kind nervous, kalamai. So I also want to share that I'm overcoming a strep throat infection. So at any time I might have to mute because I have a really bad cough. So bear with me. I can't see any of you. I only know that I don't even want to look at the number. I'm sure it's a lot of you, but enjoy.
There's 308 people. Just letting you know.
Oh, manini, no.
Yeah, small kind from all over. Yeah.
Yes. So we're gonna start up with our Kanaka Maoli influence. So Kanaka Maoli is for those on the continent, how we would say the indigenous people of Hawaii. Native Hawaiian is also another way, but Kanaka Maoli is that the heart or Kanaka Oiwi, people of the bones, people of the culture and the heritage. So we're going to begin with, I guess, the history of this colonization, the loss of land, and kind of really where that familial disconnection happened. We're also going to really get into like how healing is really rooted in our ancestral knowledge. So starting with the history, basically.
Hold on, Kia, I forgot to the kind. I know
Yeah, go ahead.
because I just realized like there's so many people from all over the place. I do
Yeah.
see a lot of Kanaka online, but for those of you that don't know the words, or you hear a word or you see a word on the slide and you're like, oh my gosh, what is that? I mean, feel free to put it in the chat, and then hopefully one of us will catch it and try to help with understanding what the word means. We just want to make sure that people have an understanding, because it's so
Thank
easy to
you,
just
Dolly.
go, you know, to just
Yeah.
go and and think that everybody knows everything that we know too. So
Oh no, mahalo
yeah,
nui for that. Thank you very much. I do
yeah,
tend to speak with Hawaiian words, and I will also do my best to make sure that if I'm going to say a word, that I will say what the translation is. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Dolly.
yeah.
And so, yeah, we're gonna, historically, and by in no way do I also want to say that, that Western contact, meaning white people, were really bad. Like, we're not definitely not trying to say like white people were really bad. There's going to be a lot of that in this in our context, but we're human beings. We're human and we're flawed. And there were allies that were non-Hawaiian, and there were Kanaka that also made some really bad choices and kind of contributed to the overall detriment of our people back in the day. So we're going to go back. So starting with the history, then basically a lot of what is happening currently began historically, and it is not an old problem. A lot of it is a continuing, ongoing problem. When we think of colonization, some people think, oh, it's ancient, it's history. It's actually still very current and very relevant. And but historically, colonization did begin with white man contact, and from there, there was an introduction of foreign diseases right off the bat, and a lot of these diseases, there were measles, smallpox, tuberculosis, and later on would be Hansen's disease, eliminated majority of our indigenous population. Introduction of capitalism forced Kanaka to move away from their ancestral lands, and our lo'i, which is our farm, our wetland farms, and our local i'a, which is our fish ponds, to Lahaina or Honolulu, where they had to find jobs to compete with the influx of other ethnicities that were here for plantation work. So kind of here's where the stigma of that lazy Hawaiian began, mainly due to a gross misunderstanding of early Hawaiian ways. Much of what a lot of people don't know, in a typical Hawaiian day, it began before the sun was up. This was when a lot of us would do kind of that hard labor we don't want to do under the sun. They would do before the sun was up. And there's a particular magic time right before the sun rays would appear, and it was called Pawa. And this time would be like our ancestors, and I'm going to use the word kupuna to describe them. Kupuna meaning our grandparents, our ancestors, our elders. They would observe or kilo, because this was a time that secret places that held water would be revealed. When the sun rose, that marked the beginning of a new day. We would often oli eale'e as the call to rejoice in the rising of the sun. And when the sun went down, that was the end of the day. Our calendars were lunar. We moved with the moon. The moon dictated our tides, our water within us, when to plant, when to fish, when to farm. It guided what we call our vaimaka lehua, our menses. And so we had a very deep and intricate relationship to the earth. Then that was just the everyday life for Kanaka. And I'm going to use the word Kanaka to describe Hawaiian, are the indigenous people of Hawaii. So daily life was held in balance by a systemic kapu system that managed the resources, and a familial structure rooted in ritual and sacredness. And we are realizing, and we've been realizing for many years now, actually, that returning to that reciprocal relationship is the healing that our world needs right now. So let's see what I got here. In Kawahiko, which is we say the days of old, the daily lives of Kanaka was strictly governed by the kapu system, and a foundation of belief in akua, and the daily ritual prayers or pule that guided most actions under this kapu system. And when we talk about akua, we don't mean God as in the way we think of God nowadays. Akua was energy. It was the elements. It was all the things that made life happen. It was the water. It was the way water would flow. It was all the various different ways water shows up in rainbows and streams, in springs. It was all of this was how we identified in a divine in a divine spiritual way to the earth. And in this everyday life, our kapu system, everybody had a role. Everyone had a kulana. I put mostly men in this image here because I wanted to really highlight what was so that you can see what is and kind of understand where this decline, where the depth of the eha really came from. So in the days of old, under the kapu system, only our men could prepare food. Only our men would cook for the women too. The women didn't cook. Sounds good, y'all. Yes, I agree. All men, you guys should cook for your wives. But in the time of the in the days of old, it was a very strict couple. Men also did not eat with women. We had two separate eating houses. In a family structure, we had a kauhale, and you had the men's eating house and you had the women's eating house. The men would cook for the women in a separate imu. And young boys would stay with their mothers until around the age of 7, where they would then put on what is like a malo. There would be like a coming of age ritual where the young boy would then leave the mother's side and enter the men's eating house. And it was another incredibly important aspect of these roles that our men had, was that the men were the keeper of the spiritual mana, or the spiritual power that their family obtained. They were responsible to feed their family's aumakua. And aumakua is a family god. And the family god it could be plants, it could be flora, fauna, it could be animals. A lot of the times people remember nowadays like, oh, my family's aumakua is a pueo, or it was the shark. A pueo is an owl. And or it was a gecko, we call a mo'o. These were what ideas that our family ancestors that have passed on, would take on embody these animals, and they would hold a very significant spiritual connection to the family. They would be called upon for guidance, for protection, and it was, but they would have to be fed, and the feeding was a ritualistic thing done every day. It was done with ava. Ava is a root drink made that kind of has like a numbing effect that is very medicinal, very healing. They would every offering had to have ava. And so the spiritual success of the family, the spiritual health of the family rested with the father, rested with the patriarch of that family. So while life was not perfect, violence was heavily frowned upon. Violence against family members, violence against women. There was a lot of violence between men. I mean, there were wars, I'm sure, I don't know if anybody's watched Chief of War, as a pretty more or less accurate description of what the chiefs were going through for control of the islands in the late 1700s. So the daily life, though, it was not a part of daily life. And one of the ways we have this knowledge is that in the 1800s, when our kingdom and we had white contact, we were given an alphabet, and our language was put into an alphabet, and we were taught how to write, how to read. We became one of the most literate countries in the world at this time. And as a result of that, we developed hundreds of newspapers. And these newspapers are gold. They are the blueprints that our kupuna left for us. They're the knowledge and the ike. They were the chants that were passed orally. They were put down in these newspapers. We're very, very thankful that we have these newspapers. So as a result, we have these stories. And one such story that is translated, and there's many different various translations of this story in different versions, but one is called Kahala Opuna. And Kahala Opuna was a rainbow goddess from Manoa on the island of Oahu, and her parents were deities. The Tuahine was the rain, was her mother, and Haukane or Kaukane was the father, the wind. And she was betrothed to be married to a man, and his name was Kauhi. And there was, in this mo'olelo, there's depictions of Kauhi gets very jealous because she's incredibly beautiful. And as men do, he's around his friends at this bathing hole where they go to swim, and they're boasting about how they had received favors from Kalo'opuna, and it sends Kauhi into a rage, where then he goes and he breaks the boundaries of his betrothal, which he wasn't allowed to really see her until they were to get married. But he goes to her and takes her from her home, and throughout this mo'olelo, he kills her many, many times. In this mo'olelo, our kupuna really laid the blueprint of all the things that you're not supposed to do, all the bad things that could happen if you do it. And it's just I encourage you to look up this mo'olelo, but it is a really beautiful and powerful way that our kupuna talked about how violence is not acceptable against women. It did happen, but it was very frowned upon. So in the beginning, there was like after Western contact, there was just like waves of infectious diseases that continued to hit Native Hawaiians. And because of our geographical location, we're the most isolated landmass in the world. And so as such, we lacked any exposure, no immune system build up to fight any of these diseases. So if you can, we have these white men coming, they're not dying from these diseases, but Hawaiians are, the Kanaka is. And so the illness that could be considered relatively mild would cause severe and fatal consequences to this unprotected population. And the climate, our geography, and poor medical treatment, our doctors of the time, our kahuna la'au lapa'au that were skilled in plant medicine, were unprepared to deal with these types of illnesses. And we were an extraordinarily strong and beautiful people. There are reports that most of us were over 6 feet, very good, strong teeth, good bones. We were incredibly healthy, largely due to our diet of eating taro or kalo. And we kind of lived in a bubble. And it was a paradise, really. We didn't have exposure to really any outside influences, outside pests. We didn't have any really predators, predator animals to really worry about. We didn't have snakes. We didn't even have mosquitoes at one point. I would love to even imagine what that would have been like back in the day, and just be out on the land and not get bitten by mosquitoes. But that bubble burst when we had ships coming in with all of these diseases, and it destroyed our people in a way that was incredibly. It was basically, if you could put it in a way, a genocide, because over a term of 40 years, we lost about 80%. So that's one in every family. And I went through my own genealogy, and I could see, when I looked at the deaths, the year, their ages, and I can just understand that there was, like, in every family, you were losing a mass amount of loved ones. And this is just in very beginning with first Western contact. We didn't get yet to when the missionaries came, because they came later. And when they did come, our dying from these diseases was used as we were blamed. We were blamed for us dying because of our sinful ways of our culture, of us dancing hula, of the innocent and lack of, I don't know, restrictions around sexuality. We had a very good understanding of sexuality. It was in my opinion, a very healthy way of sexuality. Nothing was really hidden. Everything was very out and discussed and open. Nothing was shameful. There was nothing really sinful. Yet so when the missionaries came with, the Protestant missionaries, Christian mindsets, they twisted that and said, well, you guys are all dying because you're immoral. In the late 1700s, all through the 1800s, this was a very hard time to be Kanaka, and to just imagine that alone, on top of everything else that happened. But it was, we just didn't have any defenses against diseases like syphilis, mumps, and the measles, like I mentioned. And so another disease, of course, that I mentioned earlier was Hansen's disease. So leprosy, at the time, it disproportionately affected Native Hawaiians and people with Hansen's disease because of how contagious it was. We were shunned and they were forced to live in remote leper colonies, such as in Molokai. And this was also used to this leprosy was used to cast Native Hawaiians and Kanaka as being unclean and unhealthy. And it was just another way that, these different mindsets overtook our own. And when the missionaries came and then the plantation owners, they used these narratives to justify the control of their islands. So when missionaries came, when they did come in, they came in. So just another bit of history where we were as our ali'i, there was a lot of internal fighting amongst the chiefs for control of all the islands. We do know that Kamehameha the Great ends up securing control of the islands, and his favorite wife, Ka'ahumanu, is the one to break the kapu system after Kamehameha dies. And after he dies, she breaks this kapu system by eating with Kamehameha II. And then this is a very huge thing because the missionaries have not come yet. So when they break the kapu system, when they eat together, one thing that was profound was there was no catastrophic, the gods come down, there was no wrath. So they were like, like we thought all this time we were living under this kapu, that if we broke the kapu, the gods would be angry. But we are breaking the kapu and there's nothing happening. And it kind of really shook the foundation of the spiritual foundation, because the kapu system dictated everything. When you fished, when you farmed, it managed our resources. It kept our women our men and our women separate and safe in that way for a reason. And all of that was deeply shaken when the kapu system broke. And so when these Western ideologies infringed upon like these deeply rooted connection and balance, and it shook us to our core. And when Ka'ahumanu broke the kapu system, it was only a couple of years later, I believe, like a couple of years later, that the missionaries arrived. So then when they did come to Hawaii, it was like an open book. They basically arrived and they were able to establish their religions rather easily because there wasn't another one for them to have to overtake. So it's this balance. So one of the most foundational things about us as Kanaka we have is our lokahi. It's this triangle, our lokahi triangle, that kept us in balance. This idea of like equal mana between Kanaka, Akua, and Aina. So between our idea of Akua, our spiritual energies, the people, and the land. And when the kapu system broke, that also broke as well. When another thing that amongst all this fighting with the chiefs and control, when the white man first came, was the discovery of sandalwood. So this was kind of our very first introduction to capitalism. And the sandalwood trade decimated the very foundation of our belief system that was based in the balance I mentioned. And it was, our ali'i made a lot of mistakes at this time. They were swayed, Ka'ahumanu, one thing my cousin Brooke mentions, he goes, I have nothing but aloha for our kupuna. We don't judge. Hindsight is 2020. But we do, looking back, we can see where these mistakes were made. And they were easily swayed by the promise of trade, of guns to control the war, the interfighting between chiefs. And as such, we fell victim to capitalism rather easily. And let me just see where. So here we have so with the sandalwood trade, this trade was particularly brutal, cruel to the people of Hawaii. This trade demanded hard labor from Kanaka, and it took the men away from our families. So our families were like, again, we would We would live in an ahupua'a system, which was a land management system of resource management from the mountain to the sea. And in these systems, you would have families living in their kauhale, and they would live off of the land in a way that was, deeply intricate and personal and profound. And when the white man discovered that we had sandalwood, which at this time was a very valuable wood, particularly in the China market, our ali'i just decided that we were going to harvest sandalwood and we were going to take the men away from their families and from their lo'i and into the mountains to harvest sandalwood. So here we're going to move now into kind of into our the plantation legacies, and also more about the strength and the barrier of our geographic isolation. Here's some images to just kind of understand how detrimental and iliahi is the Hawaiian word for sandalwood. This is just how detrimental this trade was to us as a people. So as you can see here, they would dig these huge holes, like they were called a lua for iliahi, and this was basically the exact measurement of a ship, and they would line up all of the iliahi in these pits so they would know exactly how much would fit on the hull of a ship. And then they would have to this is before we had cattle. This was really before we had donkeys or animals that would be able to bear the weight of these iliahi trees, of these, the wood, and they would have to bring them down themselves. So it was a very, very hard time for Kanaka, so much so that the women would go after the men and pick out the seedlings so that the iliahi wouldn't grow anymore, so that their children wouldn't have to be faced with this same brutal labor. It was really unlike, it was a complete departure from everything that we held dear, and how our understanding of our connection to land, and this idea of now taking something that we value and selling it for profit. And at the time, Kamehameha I, he did recognize because of course, if you're taking away the men from the farming and the fishing, we had famine. We had horrible famine broke out, and so Kamehameha the Great did put a kapu on any young iliahi trees, and so that they would have a chance to grow, and try to stem the rigorous harvesting and allow the men to have more of a balance with being at their kalo or their taro farms and in the fish ponds. And as a result, there was a little bit of balance there, but once he died, that was gone, and the trade was invigorated more rigorously, and it continued until it literally decimated, until there was no iliahi. So, and I think at the time, our ali'i didn't quite understand the insidious nature of capitalism. There's a lot of talk of that, Kamehameha the Great was taken advantage of, not understanding the price of what things cost. And as such, he was sold things at a very inflated price. There's even a story of how he bought a mirror for $800. And and the things that they bought, they didn't really quite know how to use. And Samuel Kamakau writes, he is not kind about our ali'i when he writes about the iliahi trade, and says basically that the things they bought was left to rot, went to waste, and they just didn't really understand what they were doing. But who suffered the most were the commoners, the common people. And here we get more into this geographical isolation. So again, talking about Hawaii as the most isolated landmass in the world. We know this now. We know this is common knowledge to us because of the US military and the understanding that whoever controls Hawaii controls the Pacific. And this was definitely true when we look at the introduction of sugar. So again, now after the sandalwood trade, we did have other trades like whaling, but the one that really affected us as Kanaka was the introduction of sugar and the introduction of plantations. So at this time, as the years are going on, now we are having the descendants of these missionaries running these plantations. And in order to get the work done to harvest and grow and maintain all of these sugar, they had all the ethnicities from across the world come to work in the plantation. So this was really where we saw um, this melding pot of different ethnicities come in. But we know that with sugar, with introduction of sugar, we know that monocropping, just one type of crop, has a very detrimental effect on the endemic environment. We also know that sugar required a lot of water, which led to water diversion from the east sides of our islands, like as we see in Maui and East Maui, and as we saw in Waihole, for us to feed the west sides that were drier. And this took away water again needed for kalo production. This was very detrimental to the well-being of Hawaiians, and as a result, we're still fighting for our water rights to this day. And when we were forced to stop growing kalo, our health began to really decline. You know, kalo. When I talk about kalo, talk about taro, and this plant isn't just an incredibly nutritious plant that has basically just almost every single nutrient you would need. It's got iron, it has calcium, it has fiber. It is also in our genealogy. It is in what we call our mo'okuauhau of origin. Kalo is our oldest brother. There is the story of Kalo comes from also the beginning of the kapu system, the beginning of the reason why men and women didn't eat together. According to our legends and according to our cosmologies, our sky father Wakea and our earth mother Papahanaumoku had a daughter Ho'ohuku Kalani. Ho'ohuku Kalani was incredibly beautiful, and Wakea, as she grew up, he desired his daughter. And so when she was old, when she grew up, they had relations and she got pregnant. And that baby that she was pregnant with was born, and it was a stillborn baby. And they mourned the loss of this baby, and they named this baby Haloa Nakalau Kapalili. And then they buried this stillborn baby, and from this burial grew the very first kalo plant. And the next child they had, they named Haloa, and Haloa was, and in our cosmologies, the very first human man. This mo'olelo, this story, speaks to the reciprocal relationship that we have with the land. That if our oldest brother is this kalo plant, then we are to malama to take care of kalo, and in return, kalo will take care of us. What's really beautiful about kalo is that it's a ha, and then which is the stem, and you have the lau, which are the leaves that are very nutritious and delicious, and and then you have the corm, which is what poi is made out of. And what you do when you are harvesting this is you just cut off the corm and you cut off the leaves and you replant the ha. So it is ever giving, life giving over and over again. There is stories now of these stems, which we call ha, that are thousands of years old, still being planted, still growing in lo'is on Hawaii Island, where I live now, in the districts of Kohala. So, which is really, really exciting that they were able to continue. But that's how important kalo is to us as Hawaiians, is that it represents this relationship we have to take care of the land, and in return, the land will take care of you. But we need water to grow kalo. We need a lot of water. So when water was being diverted, it disrupted this relationship. And as we know, sugar ends up becoming the reason why our monarchy becomes overthrown. So in January 1893, after years of American businessmen, they were known as the Big Five, they had a coup. They led a coup against our then Queen Liliuokalani and overthrew our monarchy with aid of the USS Boston, the United States military, the Marine Corps that was in the islands at the time. And this was done without really the US's okay. It was one of those things that they did first and apologized for later sort of thing. It was a very, very hard time for us as Hawaiians to have to lose our monarchy, for it to be overthrown by the interests of these American businessmen, because they wanted in into the American market, and they didn't want to have to pay tariffs on their sugar. And it was all, again, for the bottom line, to make money, for capitalism. So when when our kingdom is overthrown, there was a lot of a huge uproar from our Kanaka. And this is not in history books, of course. But there were newspapers across, there were petitions, we call them the Ku'e petitions, that went across all of the islands. We had over 400, excuse me, 44,000 signatures to fight the overthrow of our monarchy. Our queen, Liliuokalani, went to the United States to plead, for the return of our kingdom. She is arrested, and charged with treason and put in house arrest in Iolani Palace. And this is a time of really great eha for us as Kanaka. But what sugar brings, see, oh, kalame. What the sugar industry also brings, like I mentioned earlier, was an onslaught of all these different ethnicities. The first to arrive was the Japanese, then came, was the Chinese. I'm sorry, the Chinese and the Portuguese and the Puerto Ricans, Russian. We had Norwegian, we had Korean, and of course Japanese and Filipino. We had all these ethnicities come in the hundreds of thousands to work on these plantations. What this did was put the Kanaka as a minority in our own land, and it kind of pitted us up against each other. The plantation owners they kept these ethnicities segregated, because we knew that to control the masses, you had to segregate them, and they would cause division between the two, incite racism between the different groups. And so in some of my pictures here, we do see where there's Puerto Rican workers here at the top left. These are Japanese women working as well. You had just all these, and within these own ethnicities have their own stories of hardship coming from their homelands to work on the plantations. And there were different languages being spoken. So this is where pidgin kind of is created. And what I really love about this era, as hard as it was, it really brought a sense of how to work with and live with and intermarry with people who are different than you. And pidgin was a really great way to this day, it's still spoken. Of course, my pidgin comes out when I'm angry. I don't know why, but it does. And so it just is a way that highlights how us as human beings, our human spirit is stronger than division. And it they would pay, they used wage pay to control the different ethnic groups, using bonuses and contracts to control and incentivize productivity. But the communities came together, we blended our food, we blended our customs, and created a tapestry of uniqueness. That's what makes Hawaii so special. There were many labor disputes because of this, because of the way they were being controlled. There was the most successful labor dispute comes in 1946 with the largest sugar strike at that time, which closed down 33 of the 35 sugar plantations in Hawaii at the time. But before we get to 1946, so we are now with the overthrow, the monarchy, and with that comes the criminalization of us speaking our language. Here is where we are not allowed. It becomes a crime to be Hawaiian. It becomes a crime to speak our language, to practice our customs. And I just will share a quick mo'olelo that my auntie my auntie Nani Faye shares with me. So my auntie Nani Faye Paglenawan is one of the founders of Pohana Navahine, and she's my mom's third cousin. I come from a long line of really beautiful Hawaiian Portuguese or Hawaiian Portuguese mix. And our family is resilient and strong, but we also have a very deep, insidious, dark history to our family of violence and domestic abuse. My auntie Nanife tells a story of when she went to go visit her grandmother, who was living at the time in Laie, and she arrives kind of unannounced, doesn't let her know she's coming. She walks in on her grandmother speaking with her friend and Uncle George. And my auntie Nanife is related to me through my mom's side. It just so happens this Uncle George that she's talking to is my Uncle George Stillman on my grandfather's side of my mother's father. And they're talking, and they're when she walks in on them, they are just like wide-eyed, trembling, shocked to silence. She is like surprised, like, what's going on? Like, hi, I'm here. And they're just like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my gosh. She thinks she's walking on them having an affair. And she goes, oh, I don't see anything. I'm not seeing anything. She goes to walk away and they go, no, girly, come back. That was her nickname, girly. And they tell her, come back, come back. It's okay. Whew, you just had us scared because we were speaking in Olelo Hawaii to one another. And this is my auntie Nani Faye now is in her 80s. So as you can imagine, as a young girl, this was many years ago. And she was like, oh, they were speaking in our Hawaiian language. And they share the story of my Uncle George shares with her when he was a young boy. Now the US military came to their home, dragged his mother out by her hair, and was beating her. And when they exited the home, he saw that they had tied his father to a post and was beating him. And then he looks up in the tree and saw that they had hung his grandfather. And this story, when I put the two and two together, because I don't, and talking with Manti Nani Faye, didn't realize that this was how my grandfather's grandfather had died, and that he was hung for speaking Hawaiian. So these stories, I had never really heard this story. So it just highlights that deep the traumatization that happened to Kanaka that isn't really in books. It's not really talked about that just for speaking Hawaiian. And so these the language here is this at this time it's a very, very hard time to be Hawaiian. This was when the push to become American really, really takes root. And Hawaiians are stigmatized. We're basically at the bottom of the ethnic totem pole of all of these other ethnicities. We're thought of as lazy, as stupid, uneducated, that we don't want to work. We just want to we just want land to be lazy. And there was a lot of these narratives are still I still heard in my own youth from certain people. And it is a stigma that we have overcome with the Renaissance in the late 70s. And definitely as more and more Hawaiians became more Western educated, there has been a turnover of that. But this was the era that my grandparents and my parents grew up in. I did want to also highlight that it is 9:57. So at around like 10 o'clock, I was gonna offer a break. If you guys wanted to take like, I think Maka, you said like a 10-minute break.
Yes,
And
we'll
then we
pause for 10 minutes if folks we can do
okay.
that for everybody.
Yeah. Yes, is that good? So let's see. Okay.
Yep.
So it's like
And then
9:50.
I'll share because you were talking about Auntie Nani Faye, yeah? Yeah. I'll share in the chat a video that actually documented the story that Kia was talking about with the Maui Public Arts Hui, if that's
Hello,
okay.
Maka. That's awesome. Yes. Okay, so if we guys are okay, we can start that 10-minute break now, and then when we come back, I can get continue more with my little talk story sesh, which I hope
Awesome.
you're all enjoying. And if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. And yeah, oh my gosh, 315 people. Oh.
All good.
Uh,
All right, everybody. We'll pause for 10 minutes. We'll be back. Can folks come back on where in yeah, like by 10:10? If well 10:10
10:10 sounds
Hawaii
good.
time. Sorry,
Oh,
at 10
yes.
minutes to wherever everybody is joining us around the Honua. But yes, be back here in 10 minutes and we will continue this wonderful and educational presentation. See you on a little bit.
Mahalo nui.
Hey, aloha everybody. Hope you're back from your break. Got to do a little stretch, use a lua, go get water and all the things. So thank you for coming back if you are, and I will hand it back over to Kelly and Dolly to take us home. Or continue on, not take us home. We have so much more to learn. I'll leave it to the two of you then.
Oh, yes.
Take it home.
Mahalo.
Mahalo maka. Okay, yes, Velina mai, ano, come back, come back. That was a good little
Yeah,
break. Got to breathe.
that's a great break.
Yeah.
I guess kind of
Um,
because we're after, because where did we leave off from the sugar plantation
yeah, sugar
kind
and
of area?
yes.
I
Yeah.
guess the what's kind of coming to mind because I know there were people that came in afterwards, um, and they might not have started in the beginning. And I just to kind of connect to the beginning as we go forward and get more into the DV stuff, yeah, as you're talking about stuff historically, yeah, and setting it all up, for that. Just reminding everybody of the importance of Hawaiʻi and why, what is your name? But it's not just your name, right? It's pretty much like how Kea opened us up with, your name, but where you from? What's your Mauna's name? What's your wind's name? The rain name, everything, basically emphasizing the fact that um we are not just our name. Um and all the things that Kea had shared in the beginning in terms of the kulana and the roles of Kane and Wahine, really all of that has to do with Kuana Ike Hawaii. So what is the Hawaiian perspective or what is Hawaiian worldview? And what is the way in which we live? And when you talk about when someone asks you a white koinoa, it's like if you just give them your name and you don't actually share everything else, like where you from, then you only give them like what 10% of who you are. Really, there's a lot in a name for sure. Um, but you kind of see what I'm kind of sharing. Hopefully, everybody's kind of understanding. Like why the importance of, and it's all a part of furthermore like what's going to be shared as we go forward. Um, this idea of how things were disconnected before and how Kia was saying that the Lokahi Triangle, the Hawaiian worldview, was broken. Yeah, and it wasn't just um it's all these little things that just went and boom, like it just all these different things, right? All these introductions, all these influences, all of these things that came in and just went whoop. Our people, Kanaka Maoli, were very, just like a lot of people within the Pacific, were very hospitable, but there's a reason why they were. It was very respectful to be that, and it wasn't just about feeding or it wasn't just about doing this or that. It was really taking care of the complete person that's before you, which actually includes all of your ancestors, just like how we started today. And it's even more than that. So, yeah, hopefully making sense. Just kind of bringing it back so we get go forward and talk more. Yeah? How's that? Okay.
Oh,
Welcome back.
mahalo
Welcome back.
nui. Yeah.
Welcome back.
I really appreciate that. Yes, a good recap. Um, that was a great recap, Dolly. Yeah, so mahalo nui. Yeah, so welcome back. And I hope that you are following along. So we're gonna pick up right where we left off. So going into this was the sugar during our sugar plantation era. And so when I really wanted to highlight the sugar the sugar strike of 1946. But before we went to 1946, historically, I'm just going to take you now into 1941, because after the overthrow of our monarchy and as the Americanization of everybody now, not just Hawaiians, but the Japanese and the Chinese, and everyone's wanting to be American. We're, like that's kind of, this is the dominant, this is the ruler right now. We're a territory, we're not a state. But when on December 7th, 1941, we are bombed by the Japanese in Pearl Harbor. And this is a really pivotal historical thing to mention because it enters us into martial law. And martial law lasts for 3 years. One thing also interesting to note that during martial law is the introduction of spam. If you know Hawaii, you know spam. We love spam. Spam is so, oh no, I literally ate it this morning for breakfast, but it is not healthy. It's a canned meat dish. It's an interesting dish. It's an interesting component of all these different meats, but it's not healthy. It did contribute to the overall health decline of Kanaka with the introduction of canned food during martial law. So when martial law happens, it happens for 3 years, and it really negatively impacted everyone. You had to carry a card. There were curfews. You couldn't travel certain places. If you were Japanese born in Japan and living in Hawaii, you were interned in Japanese concentration camps. They were and Japanese born citizens. So this lasts and the reason it lasts for so long, it really didn't need to last this long. The US military just was really enjoying having complete control of Hawaii. But we finally petitioned the Roosevelt administration, and we were able to lift martial law, because what happened when martial law was enacted, the governor at the time had to step down, and the general of the army stepped up and became basically the governor of Hawaii, and that continued. That's why we were under martial law for so long. So when that's done, there were many strikes against the sugar plantation era, against the very detrimental way the plantations were being run. It was, wages were really low, living conditions were really poor. And there were other labor strikes that were unsuccessful. The Filipinos had a labor strike, the Japanese had a labor strike. What made the labor strike of September 1st, 1946 so successful was the coming together under the leadership of the International Longshoremen's and Warehousemen's Union, the ILWU, and about 26,000 sugar workers and their families, like 76,000 people all together, had a 79-day strike. And that, like I had mentioned previously, completely shut down 33 of the 34 sugar plantations in the islands. And this brought an end to the paternalistic labor relations, and it issued in a new era of participatory democracy within the plantations, and then stemmed out in Hawaii's political and social institutions and our social environments. But what I really what I loved about learning about this the sugar strike was that everybody came together. This was a time where we cannot fight these battles alone, individually, within our own ethnic group. It was only successful when everybody came together. And this was really kind of what ushered in this melting pot, this blending of all of our ethnicities together, just made us this really unique. This is what makes Hawaii so unique, is the ability for all of us to live together in harmony with people that are different. And then moving into now, like basically really honing in as time is going on, and I'll get with it, we were inundated with these Western ideologies, patriarchy being one major one. And then just, Western ideas of autonomy, like, me, myself, and I pull myself up by my bootstraps. I alone am responsible for me. It's just myself. And that juxtaposition with Hawaii and indigenous peoples really all over, more of a collectivistic, harmonial idea of relational healing, of being in relation, not just like I'd mentioned before, to the land and to our environment, but also within one another. And this stems from an understanding of kuleana. Kuleana means responsibility. It's also the word we use in our Hawaiian language to talk about privilege, to be our reason, our cause. It is, so when we say that this, I have a kuleana to do this, we're not just saying it's a responsibility, we're also explaining all the ways that this is like our reason, the reason I get up in the morning, the reason I'm raising my children this way, the reason I make sure I always come with something when I go visit my tutu, or, it's this understanding that we are all connected. We're not separate. We're not isolated. We are connected. Like how mycelium is connected under the ground, how the trees are connected to know one another, what needs what, who's suffering, who needs nutrients, who needs care. That's really how, as humans, we should be connected to one another. But we're always fighting this Western individualistic mindset. And this is definitely this Western mindset. It's rooted, in deep in Europe and New England, and over the 14th, 15th to the 18th centuries. Basically, when they introduced like to really get that patriarchy in connection to basically white supremacy idea, we had a mass murder of over 5 million women over a span of 300 years during historical incidents such as the Spanish Inquisition, the burning of witches, the burning of those that held knowledge, ancient knowledge, midwifery. They were wise in herbalists. If they were the beer makers, they were the ones who had property that men wanted. And this really solidified the social standing of inferiority that they subjected women to. So they're coming with this idea. And this is what our men now are being raised in, this understanding of the nuclear family, the man in charge, the man at the head and that's really what patriarchy is. Patriarchy basically centers the man in all things, right? The family and the workplace. Matriarchy centers the children. So when we center the children in all things, then and with this mindset, their focus is also on the future, so that in caring for the earth and when we are caring for our children. And that's just kind of this these derogatory ideologies of women that were projected on our Kanaka men over all of these years that I had been mentioning to, because women being second to men was as a very Western thing. And when we emasculated our indigenous men, we took away their role as the spiritual keeper of the family, of the provider, of the cook, and all this to, the stigma. It greatly negatively affected our men. Also into marriage with ethnicities, and such in my case, in the Portuguese ethnicity, that introduced domestic violence into our family in that way. Like my auntie Nanife shares a lot when she speaks publicly. She shares a lot about our shared great grandfather, my great grandfather, Armistead Reeves. He was very violent to my grandmother. As such, my great grandmother, and as such, my grandmother's. She had 9 brothers and sisters, and they all grew up with this idea of that you took out your anger and your frustration out on your woman. That it wasn't nice, but it wasn't our business. We didn't talk about it. We didn't, everybody knew that it was happening. Nobody really said anything about it. So I do have these 2 images here also just to depict, as we're moving forward in the times to get to today, this idea of also how when the sugar era ended, and it did end, after that the sugar strike, it slowly began its decline. We introduced tourism. Tourism really became huge after Hawaii became an illegal state in 1959. And by illegal, I mean, one thing I did not touch upon when I spoke of the overthrow was that one of the biggest lies America says is that we were annexed to the United States, and we were not. There is no actual documentation of annexation. And as such, being a country, we were our own country, our own government, a constitution. We, according to international law, we are still a country. So we are, in a sense, not really overthrown. We are being occupied. So since 1893, the Kingdom of Hawaii is being currently occupied by America, by the United States of America. That's a really important component to mention because we are, as we as our men we're living under this under this deep shadow of shame and taking away our identity and replacing it with this, like, you need to be American, but you're not good enough to be American. You're not a white man. So it was very emasculating to our men. And I just wanted to share a story because I like sharing stories, because stories, I think, as Hawaiians, this is how we would pass down knowledge. But one such story is of my own father. My father's name is Byrne Parker, and he was born in 1949. So he was raised in a household where his grandparents spoke Hawaiian, but did not teach him. His own mother didn't speak Hawaiian, said it was no need to speak Hawaiian. You don't need to know that language. He grew up everything, you want to be American. And so comes of age as a teenager, graduates high school, and it's right during the time of the Vietnam War. He is not drafted. He chooses to enlist because, as he told me, if you enlisted in the Army, you only had to serve one term. But if you're drafted, you have to serve 2 terms, which was essentially a year in the Army. And so my father was raised with very strong women. He talks to this day, tells me wonderful stories of my great grandmother being very feisty, also very beautiful. She was the first Miss Hawaii, but could kick ass and would fight back. And so they didn't really have violence so much so amongst women in on my father's side of the family, but he was beaten really badly by his stepfather, and so he was raised in a very violent way. My his biological father was Filipino and played the piano and traveled the world playing piano, and abandoned my grandmother and her 5 children to go play piano around the world. And he was actually quite famous. And then he had a band in Hawaii during their 50s that was actually well known. And he made a lot of children all around the world. And he had about 5 wives, and very, very, colorful, colorful story. And but my father was raised by a Hawaiian Portuguese man from Waianae who was very violent. But my father speaks of him lovingly, says that, even though he would threaten to kill him often, would hold a gun to him at times, would beat him with 2x4s. He was also the one who showed up at his football games, and the one who taught him how to fix cars and taught him how to build things and was there for him. So when my father then goes on to Vietnam, the stigma of being Hawaiian, and now you're in the army with all these other different ethnicities, and it's everybody wants to be American. That's the thing. But Vietnam very much kills that American dream for him. Came home very bitter, very, very hurting tremendously with PTSD, having seen horrific, horrible things, having done horrific, horrible things, and all of this just eating at him, at his soul. And he is a very violent man, very violent man. My mother is raised in a very Hawaiian Portuguese household that was very strictly Catholic household. They get together, they just date for a few weeks. She gets pregnant. They're not dating, but because she's pregnant, she is forced to marry my dad. And so my dad tells the story of how his girlfriend at the time drops him off at the church to marry my mother. This is my own mo'olelo of DV. And my father was, as you can imagine, very abusive to my mother and my oldest brother. It's one of the stories that, because you guys are jurists and you are the ones who sit at that bench and you work with, perpetrators of violence. My father was one of those men that stood in front of a judge once for assault, again, with a rap sheet, a very long rap sheet. having had connections even to the Hawaiian mafia at the time. And he tells the judge looks at him, he's like, Mr. Parker, you know, he speaks of this judge so often, but my father has dementia now. He can't quite remember his name. But there's my dad, young Kanaka, angry. Um, my mother had finally managed to leave him. We had to hide in shelters. I was 3 years old, 4 years old, remembering in the middle of the night having to leave, him threatening to kill her many times if she left, being raised with that fear, that's being so scared, not understanding. And this is the man in front of the judge, and the judge is looking at this rap sheet, and he realizes, oh, Mr. Parker, I see that you are a Vietnam vet. And my dad's like, excuse me, veteran, you're a veteran. And my father's like, yes. He goes, have you heard, do you know what PTSD is? And so it is at this case that my father finally, instead of being incarcerated, gets sent to a place where he finally receives help. And this is the beginning of his own healing journey. So he's alive now. He's 76, and he's, one of my favorite people in the world. And a lot of healing had happened, a lot of forgiveness and a lot of healing when my mother was passing away. But that story of how finally somebody who saw him for not just, this angry person, but understanding all of the things that led him to be where he was at that time. So that's my story of my dad. So as we move into like and looking at again, so what my father, when he came home from Vietnam, very disillusioned, arrives home from war, and he's met with protesters that were throwing rotten food at him, calling him a baby killer. And he's it just breaks him. One of the things that healed him so much was the return of the hokulea. He tells me, standing on Diamond Head and watching hundreds of people waving and cheering as the hokulea sets out on its maiden voyage, the sense of pride he didn't know, couldn't quite understand. And as a result, because my uncle, his cousin, Stephen Morris, my uncle Pudge, was heavily involved in the very, very beginnings of the Protect Kaho'olawe Ohana. My dad joins the Protect Kaho'olawe Ohana, which we call PKO. And as you see here in this top picture, this is a picture of the bombing of Kaho'olawe by the military. So as the U.S. took over Hawaii, the military takes over. Again, our geographical strategic location makes us very ideal for military purposes, and our aina is used in ways that are incredibly detrimental to our environment. And my father finds his voice and finds his sense of self and place in joining the Protect Kaho'olawe Ohana. And it's full of, at the time, of young, mostly veterans of Vietnam War, angry Kanaka, and they come together and they form a anti-violence resistance to the bombing. And over time, we were successful. We were able to get the U.S. military to stop bombing Kaho'olawe. But my dad's stories of this are just so entertaining because he was working at the time for United Airlines. So this is before TSA, and he would be able to hop on airplanes and go to all the different islands and pass information. And this top right photo here is a picture of all these kupuna that were on their way to the island after when the military ceased bombing. They didn't stop the bombing, but they were allowing cultural practitioners to come onto Kaho'olawe. And this really kind of began in the 70s with the return of the hokulea, with PKO fighting, finally Kanaka stepping up and saying, this isn't right. It just unleashed an tornado, like a huge wave of resistance that basically began the Renaissance. We call it the Kanaka Renaissance, the coming back of our culture, being proud again of being Hawaiian, of being able to speak our language. So this was really where Punana Leo, which is our Hawaiian language immersion school, preschool, began to bring back the language. And it really highlighted the beginning of resistance that we see to this day. So to this day now, we are still fighting. Here is pictures of our kupuna blocking the road up to Mauna Kea to stop the construction of the 30-meter telescope, the TMT. And so this is just one fight of many, many. There is Makua Valley, Hanauna Niho in Waimanalo. There's Kahuku, Pohakuloa, all of the military wanting to renew their leases. I just want to give you an idea of how much now, as in the 40 years really since the beginning of the Renaissance, we have begun to start to fight back and fight for control of our resources. The military, Navy in 2022, in 2021, poisoned over 90,000 Navy personnel when jet fuel entered the aquifer, the well, that's the water. And they built the Red Hill bunkers they built those Red Hill bunkers, you guys, before World War II, before the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. I thought it came after, but it came before as a way to reserve fuel. And they hid it so that it wouldn't be a target, because that's what the Japanese were targeting. They were targeting the ships. They were targeting the ways they could refuel and to cripple, right, the US's position in the Pacific. But they built these bunkers over Oahu's largest aquifer. And so, water is life. We can't live without water. So it has become this stance that most Native Hawaiians are to this day constantly fighting for protection of our land and protection of our resources, as I mentioned, and is our kuleana for our children, for the generations to come. And where that leaves us, now we are in Kanaka today. So all of these, the intergenerational trauma, the violence, the intimate partner violence that we see so often, that was very much present in PKO too. How Nani K. Trask writes about her time in the Protect Kaho'olawe Ohana, and how she would witness the men that were there, that were, gaining back their pride in who they are and refining their identity, yet they would beat their wives and then have girlfriends on the side. And she wrote a whole paper on it, and I showed my dad. I was like, look, she's writing about you, because he also had a girlfriend on the side. So this history is very much tied to my own identity of who I am and who my family is, and our own journey to rediscovering who we are as Kanaka, and learning our language, and learning this history so that we can heal from it, right? And so here we're gonna kind of get more now into the service needs and gaps of what we are looking at. And the state of Hawaii faces several critical gaps in service gaps in the realm of domestic violence support. And these gaps include a lack of legal services, particularly for those seeking representation in court. It highlights a shortage of community-based organizations that really can provide comprehensive support. I live on Hawaii Island, which is our largest island, and there's many rural spots that have zero access really to care unless you have to drive. I worked really intimately with the community of Kohala, which is in the north part of our island, and it is a very rural, kind of hard to reach part of our island. And there was a lot of need, a lot of people speaking of needing shelters, and the only shelters are on Hawaii Island are operated by Child and Family Services, and they're located only in Hilo and in Kona. We look at our legal system. We are definitely working to bring change about in our systems, but funding is, of course, always an issue. One thing a lot of survivors tell me is there's not a lot of financial assistance On the outer islands, Oahu has, of course, being the most heavily populated island, has a lot of good services there with the domestic violence action resource network there. They have a lot of more shelters. They have some legal representation that's available, but on the outer islands, this is lacking. And as we see with disaster planning, with our recent disasters of COVID, even after the Lahaina wildfire that wiped out that town, we definitely see an uptick of domestic violence situations. Call centers are more inundated during COVID because the abusers were stuck home with their victims, and it just exacerbated the violence, because a lot of it is perpetuated of with all the issues, the social issues that local people, not just Kanaka, endure in Hawaii, our lack of stable housing, the lack of affordable housing in Hawaii. Our wages do not equate the cost of living in Hawaii at all. And all of this just exacerbates the conditions that create an environment for violence to flourish. And that's really, what we're looking at. Inflation has only made that worse. This current political unrest has made that worse. And it's where we're at now. And a lot of local boys, a lot of like Kanaka nowadays have more opportunity, of course, for education, but being the cost of education, the cost of healthcare and raising children in Hawaii is, we're definitely the most expensive state to raise children currently. And it just exacerbates all of the conditions that make violence flourish. So some of our key data points here, this came from, our sources are listed right here, according to the Hawaii State Coalition Against Domestic Violence, in an article by Hawaii's News Now. There was about 579 survivors are served in one day on Oahu. West Oahu cases went up 40% in 2023. West Oahu is our communities of Waianae, which are majority Native Hawaiian communities, where you see a lot of Native Hawaiian populations. You're going to see a higher uptick of domestic violence cases, and also other socioeconomic factors such as houselessness and also health conditions as diabetes. And so it's not just one issue. It's many issues. It's all interlayered and intricate, and they all contribute to just this environment that's it's a lower way of living. Yeah, we're not living in the way our mana really needs to be living in that balance, where we're overstimulated, we're overworked. It's the impact on domestic violence on Native Hawaiian women in particular, despite Hawaii being the homeland for Hawaii, shows that there's a 2020 US Census shows that more Native Hawaiians are now living on the continent. About, in fact, that number has gone up even more. The Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement, now the Hawaiian Council, has shown that about 56% of Hawaiians have now been forced away from Hawaii, away from, the land, away from their roots, and now live in what we call the diaspora. Although now I'm kind of learning that using even the term the diaspora could be harmful, because you're Kanaka no matter where you are, and you're indigenous no matter where you are, you're still connected to Hawaii no matter what. It does lend that sense of division, and we don't need any more of that division. But we are disproportionately experiencing higher rates of domestic violence. We have about 20.6% of Native Hawaiian between the ages of 18 to 29 report IPV, compared to 13.3% of non-Kanaka. 19.6% of Kanaka women between the ages of 30 and 44 experience IPV. IPV, if you're not aware, is short for intimate partner violence. And that's compared to, again, 13.3 of non-Kanaka and 21% of Kanaka women between 45 and 59 experience IPV compared to 12.6 of those of the same age bracket that are not Kanaka. So, and then our youth, our this intergenerational trauma, you grow up, you see Papa hitting tutu, you see your dad hitting your mother, you see your uncle hitting your auntie, and your auntie fighting back, and your auntie hitting your uncle, and violence and fights and substance use exacerbates all of these conditions. And the Hawaii Youth Risk Behavior Survey found that 23.2% of Hawaii public middle school students in these in 2015 to 2019 report being purposefully controlled or emotionally hurt by a dating partner. This is middle school now. So we're looking at ages of like 12, 13. As they're dating, there's a lot of control, a lot of, insecurity. There's not a good sense of what it means to be a healthy male rooted in their own divine masculinity. That aspect of how our Kanaka men used to be has been disrupted. And there's a lot of things affecting our youth now, especially with the introduction of social media and devices, cell phones, etc., that exacerbate all of these conditions that just make it easier to be in an environment that is violent. So it's, I mean, I sure that was a very dismal bunch of numbers and cases, and I don't want that to be the overall shadow, because we know what we need to do. We have the answers that we know we can use to heal these detrimental effects to our people. And there are a lot of people out there working very diligently for this exact thing to happen. We're not it's not very, it is dire, but we have the answer. It's not uh in a way, we know what we need to do. And our culture, and a lot of people say, oh, the Native Hawaiian culture, as it's ancient, a lot of depictions of ancient Hawaii as if our culture is extinct, as if it's ancient. This is what cultural erasure does. It makes people think our culture doesn't exist anymore. And that's not true. We are living Kanaka, we are living our culture. There are many more people speaking Hawaiian now than there has been. Our language continues to flourish. My husband is fluent, my children are fluent, they go to a Native Hawaiian language school. And these things here are traditional healing approaches. These are still active. We still engage in them constantly, all the time. These are really the answer. If we're going to look at how to counteract violence, counteract the detrimental individualistic mindsets that make our people in general feel isolated and alone, and that and the shame and the stigma that holds them back. Understanding, again, this mycelium concept that we are all connected, that if someone's hurting, that there is a solution and an answer and an approach that will counteract that. And these are just some of the solutions that we have. There are more. Like I said, our culture is a living, thriving culture. Our people are still practicing ho'oponopono, and ho'oponopono is our way of basically righting what was wrong. It's like to ho'o means to enact of, to make happen, and pono means righteous. It means all that is right in the world. What is that balance, that lokahi, that is pono. So to ho'opono would be to enact the ways to instill balance again in our relationships. There is a strict methodology to how ho'oponopono was enacted in the days of our kupuna in Kawahiko. I say, ho'oponopono I mean, again, going back to our geographical location being the most isolated landmass, despite, yes, our chiefs fighting for control of the islands, but you still had hundreds of thousands of people who had to live in very close proximity to one another that got along relatively very well. And a lot of that had to lie in our sense of pono. And we had these familial, really, it was the family units that enacted ho'oponopono. When there was conflict, and of course there was, we're humans, there were processes that would happen, and ho'oponopono was often kind of the last piece that would happen, but it was a process where those involved would sit with a elder or someone of importance that was that knew everyone, not involved in the pilikia or the eha or the problem or the issue that was happening, and would enact a process that we called uh, it's a very intricate process. You have like hulihia, really like to like this process of unbundling the eha. Like we would think of a problem, say somebody did something really bad to you. Now there's a string, this invisible string from that person to you. And say you then went and told all your friends about it, and all your friends now don't like that one person. Okay, so now that string connects them to this person, and it gets twisted, and rumors are spread, and the eha grows bigger than it really needs to be. So they would have this process of like really of untangling all of those things to getting to the truth, the oya i'o, the real raw truth of the matter, and working through that. And you had to be completely honest. You couldn't say, oh yeah, I forgive you, but then you really don't inside. That would be really wrong, and you would probably get called out on it, and you wouldn't look really good, and you would really be lowering your own mana. So our ancestors really valued the idea of building upon your mana. Like you want it to be manaful. You want it to walk around like in a very good pono state, in balance with your health, with your body, with the aina and akua and one another. That was the ideal. And like if you didn't, then bad things could happen to you. You wouldn't catch a lot of fish, or you could get sick, or your child could get sick. All of these ideas that, to have your mana elevated, and you remain in a state of pono, was for everybody around you, not just you. La'au lapa'au is our plant medicine. So again, using our plants to heal, using the spirituality of plants to heal. I love la'au lapa'au. I'm gonna just show you how, and it's terrible that it's in a plastic baggie, but my good friend gave me popolo leaf for my cough I mentioned earlier. I'm gonna put this in a tincture as soon as the full moon is full and I get to some alcohol, some pure alcohol to steep it in. And this I know would be exactly what my body needs. So la'au lapa'au is just that relationship to plant medicine, but deeper than that, to that relationship to the plant. And pule is our Hawaiian word for prayer. And that's universal. It's not just, as a Hawaiian thing, of course not. It's a universal thing. Pule is very personal, very deeply personal to you, to your akua, to who pule to really write yourself. It's a tool that you use to strengthen yourself, to turn to in times of need, to turn to in times of gratitude, in times of direction, of guidance. And aloha aina is this other tool that has really become in the last 20, 30 years a thing. I mean, gosh, I remember when I graduated college in 2011, there weren't very many Native Hawaiian Aina-based education places. But now there's so many, and they're wonderful and beautiful to see people in clearing land, clearing out fish ponds. There's a fish pond on Oahu called Pai Pai Oheia that just recently cleared out its very last bunch of mangrove, which is this really invasive, very hard to take out. Like, think of a giant weed with roots thick like tree branches, in water of all things, and hacking away at that to complete a local i'a that's now, it's, I don't even know the exact size, but it's massive, it's huge, and the fish are coming back, and life is coming back to this fish pond, and the limu, we're seeing the limu coming back, and us identifying the different kinds of limu, the different kinds of fish, and that again, eating of these foods to make ourselves healthy and connect to the land are all ways that we heal. We heal ourselves, we heal one another. And aloha aina means like love for the land. This term really was coined by George Helm during the origins of the Protect Kaho'olawe Ohana. Aloha aina, he would say, love for the land. And I wouldn't say coined because our kupuna always, it was just understood. But he brought it back, this understanding of uh, how much our identity is tied to the land, because we are the elements too as humans. We're not above the elements. We're not separate from the elements. We are an elemental part of nature just as much as plants and animals and the land is. So understanding that relationship is really important to how we heal, and we can heal these deficits, these disproportionate amount that DV is affected. We know that our culture is the answer. We know that our cultural practices are the answer, that living our culture and changing our mindset, that paradigm shift of understanding ourselves. And when, I'm not alone or isolated. I have a community of people. I have my aina. I can learn my genealogy, connect back to my ancestors. I can learn my language. And in learning the language is learning a whole nother world of Hawaii, of Hawaii mindset, of a way of thinking that is incredibly healing, more so, I would say, much more so than in a Western way of even thinking of like ownership and, this is my right. And it's this idea of like having rights, where Kanaka, our understanding is we have a kuleana, and it's not about building only ourselves. It's definitely not about the bottom dollar. I talked at length about the, historical concept of capitalism and how detrimental that was, because Kanaka didn't really understand that was ownership of land. I didn't really touch on the Great Mahele or other things that, took the land from being a communal thing to one of ownership, and how much, again, that, we lost so much of that. Families lost their homes, and it was, again, a detrimental. But coming back to that, this idea of land being something that's for everybody, and that connection to land is really that missing ticket that's really going to help heal. And we see it in youth groups and these Aina-based education, places. We have a really wonderful story of our boys' home in Waimanalo. We had a really great Kanaka, Mark Peterson, just work on switching out the incarceration, that to prison pipeline, poverty to prison pipeline, that these troubled boys were ending up in this home. And he took them and he taught them ho'oponopono. He had them work in the lo'i. He had them, and now, I mean, there was a time where I don't know if it's still the case, but he had no one in his home. And that's really the goal. And so we do see time again and time again that a bringing back of the pride in who we are, re-identifying ourselves as Hawaiian, can lead to healing. And I don't have the word aloha here. I should. I just realized looking at aloha aina, but also having aloha. And aloha is a word so misused. I didn't touch upon tourism too much. Again, with capitalism being the bottom line, and everybody already knows about capitalism and Hawaii. We know that our culture is what's prostituted to the tourism industry. We like all that. We like the pretty hula girl, and like these Mai Tai drinks and pineapple and all the things that are actually not Hawaiian at all, but are sold as Hawaiian and sold as a way to entice people to come to Hawaii. And tourism is extremely detrimental to our environment and to the local people, to all the people that live in Hawaii, because really the way our lives are here is that they are kind of pandamount to Kanaka. They take over there's so many of them on the island that at any given time, hundreds of thousands of them come every day to Hawaii, and they sort of take over. They take over our favorite beaches. It's just it's I will say this, that when COVID happened, I remember telling my husband, I'm like, oh, this is going to be so traumatizing when this is over, because and for once in since I believe colonization happened, we had Hawaii to ourselves. The beaches were empty. Tourism was kind of shuttered at that time. People weren't really encouraged to travel. Traveling was difficult. And as a result, we saw the land flourish in a way I didn't think any of us really anticipated. I saw limu come back that I didn't know grew at my favorite beach I would go to all the time. Suddenly we're seeing limu kala, limu palahalaha, just flourish. We saw fish come back. We saw life really restore because of the it had a chance to breathe. Then when it was over, it was worse than it was before. But it did, at least we got a chance to see what that was like. So, these capitalism, the idea that anything is for sale and that nothing is sacred is really one of the most detrimental things to the entire world as a whole. And I feel that, like, Kanaka can really teach the world a thing or two about this relational way that this reciprocity way that we live with one another and with our world. And let me see,
I
time. Oh, it's
think
11.
I think yeah, I think that's
Past it.
why. So I wanna like smoothly insert myself right there because you said something awesome. And I'm sure
Please.
people caught it. So the thing that I that you shared was, the when you're talking about COVID and how, the earth was able to breathe again. Yeah. And that's so true. And it reminds me of Ho'oluaina, right? And how if the earth is able to breathe, we're also able to breathe as well, And you talk about that strong connection that we have with our land, you know. So if the Aina breathes, we breathe too. So there was all this healing going on. Like someone just put in, yep, the turtles was coming back, or the monk seals was coming and sharing their presence, and we see them all the time so much, right now, and it's amazing, And kind of talking about you talked about Pono, and you also talked about Aloha, and I'm just looking at the slide now. It's like, oh, it's right there on your slide. And Pono and Aloha is so intertwined that at times it's almost difficult to kind of describe each of them by itself because they're so intertwined. So it's kind of like, oh yeah, Pono is, oh yeah, Aloha is just about the same. And that in itself, if you stop and reflect and look at that, um, you realize how embedded everything is in culture. A lot of the things that we already needed was in culture. And culture, this is it, today we're focusing on Kanaka Maoli culture, right? So, but when you think about all of the protections and all of the things that we needed, it was already embedded in culture. And so I just wanted to kind of just do, I know because we're like almost gonna be pow, but just if you keep everybody that's still here, which is still a lot of people, um, do it one quick kind of check in, like how are you? I mean, you don't have to put like a whole story in there, but like a few words, like how are you doing so far? Like share something in the chat, um, in terms of how you're doing right now. And Hanu and Ha, like take a breath right now because I'm glad you just actually opened that up for people to breathe, Kale. Um, After all that time, now I'm thinking, oh my God, I think we probably need like 4 hours next time. Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Like,
sure.
I'm kidding.
I know.
Well,
Yeah,
there's a lot of information, right? There's a lot of things
yes.
to share with everybody. Oh, right on. I do because I saw a lot of things going in the chat. Your key of PKO, one of the aunties, it was just brought up. Um, Clara Koo with the bandana in there is one of our participants, Ohana. So I just wanted to kind of
So
mention that you
cool.
shared that, yeah, you shared that picture, and I just wanted to uplift Kupuna Clara Koo
Oh,
in there.
yes.
Yeah. I was like, oh my gosh, like you just never know. But you see what I mean, right? Like you don't know like how connected we are, and so when you go back and you're talking about all the ways in which we do these things, you go back to, like I said, Kwana Ike, so you go back to Hawaiian perspective, you go back to Hawaiian ways, why were our people so hospitable? That was one of the words, right? But why were they so respectful, right? Why were they so caring? Why did they want to make sure you had what you needed, even if the only thing I had for you was pa'akai or salt, right? Um, why were they so um why did they really want to malama you as much as they could? And it really goes down to how we treated people and how there's a respect level, but there's also that honoring of people, which actually goes back to, right? How sacred we revered life, how sacred we revered each other. And a lot of that, when you talk about trauma-informed care, which could be a whole other discussion, when you talk about trauma-informed care, not that I'm downing it or anything, but from my perspective, from the cultural perspective, it's the care that you got to be informed about. Which, if you think of it from a cultural lens and you do all the things that you do in your own culture, it's already taught you how you should be interacting with people and just loving on people,
Hmm.
or the ways in which you malama people. It's already embedded in our ways already. So just
Mhm.
putting little things out there, maybe that's more ha'avino or homework for everybody to kind of reflect on. Um, not saying that we don't need trauma-informed care today, but of course we do because things are so separated that we don't realize, um, how much it's already a part of our culture. So kind of, look at that, look at what your culture is and how you do what you do, but then also look at the spaces that you're a part of and is culture embedded within that space. And I'm not saying is it Hawaiian culture. I'm just saying culture in general, you know. Is culture actually weaved into the spaces in which we practice or do our work, you know, or do what we do. Yeah. Oh, see, I knew it. We could go for another 2 hours. Did you see that, Gail? I just saw it flash by
Huh.
the screen on the yeah. Anyways,
Hmm.
I'm not sure. I'm not trying to take away, but this is all the things that is coming to my mind, and I'm just connecting on all of the things that you're sharing and just kind of bringing it out together. Um, wow, there's a lot of good stuff in there. So mahalo to all of you for sharing. And I hope that all of you, what, everybody, even though we cannot see you or experience this together face to face with any actually and with any cultural thing, um it's the preference is to make sure we do these things more in person because of that pilino or that relationship that we have with each other.
Oh.
Yeah, there's nothing like being in space with each other, right?
Hmm.
But since this we
Yes.
we have this, we still have access to way more people across all over the place, which is awesome too. Um, you give what you can. So right now, everybody kind of we're gonna do a little breathing before we wrap up the rest of the time with all of you. So kind of
Hmm.
like go into your space, because I'm so glad you brought up Ha, yeah. It's
Yes.
so important because Ha is the thing that you have control of, right? Wherever you go, right? Um, we have the control to stop on the side, take a pause, and just breathe, right?
Yeah.
So everybody, wherever you stay, it's okay. No shame, no. Even if you're in a public place, hey, just do it. Like, um, just take that big breath in, Hanu, and Ha. And when you Ha, like let go all the stuff that's heavy in your body, in your mind especially. A lot of times our head is sore because we get too much stuff crowding our mind. Like focus all your mana or your energy in that space that you're hurting in or where it's stuck feeling. You know, gather all of that energy within you and use your breath, your ha, to go up there and just like build it up and let it go. So everybody, Hanu again, Hanu and Ha. One more time and let it rip, okay? Hanu and Ha. I recommend for a lot of you, because a lot of you are in the helping profession. If at any time in what you're doing, especially if you're presenting and you notice that there's some kind of shift going on, or something is going on and it feels interesting and you're like, oh my gosh, we gotta clear the space. I totally recommend to take the pause anytime. Take the pause anytime and just say, you know what, we just gonna breathe, and take that moment, because there's a lot of times where, we might get bombarded with information and things, and sometimes things surface within us, right? We might be triggered and we don't want to move. We just want to stay there, because we don't want to be rude, and that's a cultural thing too, right? You don't want to be respectful. But at the same time, like, if we truly say that we're doing this together, like, and you notice something, especially when you're in a room with a lot of people or just even a few people, whatever, but you feel that energy is different, maybe you feel it drop and people are getting into like a lower energy kind of moment, like, stop and breathe, you know, acknowledge it. A lot of times we don't acknowledge it and we just keep on going. But does it make sense to do that, instead of just taking the little moments to breathe, you know? So hopefully that makes sense, yeah? No shame to do that kind of stuff, you know? And the best is if you have a partner to do it with, honestly. If you're not, if you feel like yourself can't do it yourself, get a partner and work with them on that. Maybe they have more gusto to go and do that kind of stuff. You just find the people that you love doing these kind of things with. So I mahalo you, Kale, for opening that up for everybody. Um, for
Yeah, no
everybody
problem.
to hey, this is the kind of stuff never planned. It's very, very cultural. So
Yeah. I'm
it's
just reading
very
the
cultural.
chat and I'm like, oh, so
And
mahalo.
that's why that's why the you create these agendas, you create a format, but then you always have to allow for the moment and whatever happens in that space. So
Mhm.
that's very cultural. We always
Absolutely.
allow for the spiritual or the essence of things to come forward at any time. So, ay, mahalo you. Go Kia.
Yeah.
We got like
Mahalo you,
I know
Talia.
I know I guess one before you wrap up and we wrap up and everything, I knew that someone asked about, in terms of the presentation, um, what is there a book that you recommend that connects to the information that you shared?
Oh, there are so many books.
Maybe one.
Um, I think if you want to learn about like about our Kanaka worldview and life ways, our Nanaike Kumu series is really a good one. There's 3 volumes of Nanaike Kumu. And I think that would be a great place to start. Historically, um, our Queen story, written by our own Queen Liliuokalani, is an amazing book. Ruling Chiefs gives all the, written by Samuel Kamakau, which a Hawaiian historian writes about all of the the chiefs that you'll probably see in Chiefs of War. Someone just wrote Chiefs of War in the chat, so I saw that. I was like cracking up. But um, I would there are many, many great books. Definitely look for the books written by Native Hawaiian scholars. I would stay away from some of the other ones that are written not really in with our worldview in mind. But yeah, those are good starts. Yeah. Do you have another book you
Yeah.
recommend? I know I'm looking now
We we
and
we put some in the
oh, you
question and
did.
answer.
Okay.
Like, Hanani Cake Trask, yeah.
Naniki
So
Trust,
there
I
was a
mentioned her earlier. Yes, from
yep.
a native daughter. Oh, that one's a good one. From a native daughter. I also have this one, Na Kua Ana. Kua Aina,
Mm.
color my Na Kua Aina. And this is Living Hawaiian Culture. This is a really good one. I was like, I know like a ton of books all around me right now. And so that would be one I recommend. But mahalo nui dali for grounding us in the hanu, and in the breathing and in expelling in the ha. Um, that is definitely a universal technique, one that we do often just to ground us and when we are triggered, when we're overwhelmed. I really like to, you know, take off your shoes and go like and get your feet flat on the ground and the earth on grass wherever you can, if that's possible, because I really think like just electromagnetically we're connected to the earth, so that would also really help if you're gonna hanu and ha to do so on the earth. This just wanted to leave with this last olelo no eo, which is here it's just so I know Lelo no Eau is a like a proverb. This book was put together by Mary Kavena Pukui, who was a Hawaiian scholar who was able to retain an incredible amount of knowledge when we were when a lot of it was being lost. And she put together a book. So that's another excellent book. It's called Olelo No'eau, so Hawaii, like Hawaiian proverbs. And this one here, it's Hanaino ika kekino ele makule ho'oma kua aku ika ha'i. And this basically it's translates to mistreat your own elders and the day may come where you'll be caring for someone else's. So our kupuna had a lot of really like tongue-in-cheek, not nice. That's one thing I wanted to mention too about aloha. Like I know that tourism has us thinking aloha is so gushy ushy and like, oh, aloha is love, and it's actually hard. It's at times brutal. It's at times that uncomfortable, like honesty that you need to face within yourself, um, in order for you to grow and to heal. So just know that to really embody aloha, it's to sometimes it's not sugar coated and it's not nice. And a lot of olelo no'eau you'll see is not that way. It really is, it is this way. So the proverb is said to that of a rude or ungrateful child or grandchild, and it serves as a reminder to care for one's own elders first while they're still alive. The proverb warns that neglecting your own family could lead to you having to care for someone else's loved ones in the future, kind of implying a cycle of karma or consequences of one's own selfish actions. And this has a lot of deep karma. I mean, kauna, we call it kauna, meaning hidden meanings. And it really is to just understand that you to malama your elders, your children, your own selves, your family, your community, because one day you will no longer have them and you may be caring for someone else's. It's you may be you may be facing consequences of your actions. So it's just another kind of tongue-in-cheek way of reminding us that again of that, the idea that we're all connected to one another. And I did just wanna quickly close. I think it's 11:19. Where is my arrow? Oh, Calamine. And Oh, color right down here. And yeah, so this is my information. If anybody wants to email on our Instagram and just about Pohana o Navahine. And did you want to end on anything more, Dolly?
Yeah, well, I know we still have a few minutes. I don't know. Um, Gosh, I really wish I saw everybody's faces. Um, and just, see who's here, that'd be so awesome if we were all in the same space.
I just want to
In
mahalo everyone in the chat that added in the
in
chat. Thank
person.
you.
Yeah. Is there, I mean, if there's any other questions or things to share, we have so
Yeah.
many things came to the chat. Like I didn't get to see everything because it was going fast.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you both. We have a question that we actually collected. If I could pop it over to you. But I also, yes, I want to just give elevate all the mahalos, amplify all the mahalo messages that are coming towards from the audience to both you, Kia, and Dolly, just for a wonderful presentation. Like, yeah, how grounding, how important, how it is just for all of us to stay connected wherever we are coming around in this honua where we've collected. The fact that we were all able to gather here today and learn from the two of you just feels strong and powerful and the numbers. I know I'm just seeing our floating heads, but I just feel the Pilina across from everybody coming in, and whoever that maybe their ancestors are calling into that they called to us in this circle today. So yeah, I'm sure the floods of Mahalo messages are all gonna come in. But I wanted to pop a question
Yeah.
over to you too. Um, Also, okay, so somebody had asked, I was wondering how to heal if the wrong is so deep, such as in cases of severe physical and sexual abuse. What types of Hawaiian healing approaches may be appropriate in these situations, slash, how can those impacted use these approaches mentioned to move forward? It's kind of like a
Mm.
two-parter right there.
That is a really good question, though, I have to say. How can, and I guess it's connecting to some of the thoughts that I was kind of thinking, and Kia, feel free to jump in too, yeah. Um, if you're talking about like the cultural healing part of it, this is why it's super important for organizations because, not every organization is gonna have that healing modality, that healing component embedded within their programs, yeah. They might not necessarily have cultural specialists or anything like that that's there, or that one cultural person, right? That's there to provide that kind of help, yeah. Um, and I guess when it comes to the cultural part of things, like really knowing your community and who's in your community, who are the healers in your community is important. If this is an avenue that people want to have in their life, because that's their choice. Sometimes the pathway is through therapy itself, like, meeting with a LCSW or a psychologist or somebody, that could be the pathway. But then how do we get the information out there to all the providers out there that might have this kind, might like knowing Pohana na Wahine or something, right? Who can help to bridge that kind of support that way. And hopefully I don't know, Kia, because I don't see your face,
Yeah.
but
Oh, okay.
here, yeah, yeah. Let me add you guys
No
into my
worries.
thing.
Yeah. So
There you are.
I no, mahalo, Dolly. That is really important. I think that's a really great question. What to do if the eha is really, really, particularly traumatic and difficult. And I would there are like Dolly mentioned, I think therapy, of course, that's like first, I would definitely recommend seeking like professional help in that way. There is what Dolly was referring to, like other organizations that might not have connections to cultural practitioners that are rooted in like Ho'oponopono. Um, Ho'oponopono would that is one avenue, like one of our kumu, Lynette Paglinawan, is well known for to kind of she has helped people that have been through eha of this magnitude. And I would say it would one of the things that I find so healing about our culture life ways is the changing of the mindset, and it's the kind of going inside, going inward, and it's it's flipping the script. So like knowing that shame must switch sides. I just want to like kind of say that was said by a French woman, Giselle Pelicot, that she said shame must switch sides. So knowing that, this is the error that happened to you is like not not yours to hold on to, and that we can use culture to heal by forming a different identity, a deeper identity, looking to whatever your culture is and what practices that your culture has that you can learn and hold on to, that can be meditative, that can ground you, to help in that healing process, getting, on the land. I mean, like Dolly mentioned, Ho'olu'aina. For those that don't know, that's a 100-acre nature preserve that's connected to Kokua Kalihi Valley in Kalihi on Oahu, that her and I both once worked at. And it's an incredibly healing place. And we would get Women's Way, women that were coming out of prison would come up there to work, and I saw often a lot of healing. Sometimes, um, messy and but just incredible healing take place. And it's a process. It's not an answer. It's not a one stop, one stop shop type of thing. It's a process of kind of identifying and growing your own identity and finding strength in the practices of your culture, whether you want to start dancing hula or weaving lauhala or whatever your own ethnic culture may be. Go and finding what that is, looking up stories of your ancestors. We all come from resilient people, resilient women, women who have been through hell and back, and learning their stories can be really healing. Saying their names, learning their names. So that would kind of, I guess, be my answer to that. Yeah. But
No, mahalo. Appreciate that. We had one more question come in, and then I wanted to ask, after this question, wanted to just honor, do you want to punny this session with an oli or a pule?
I did.
Okay. So
Yeah.
I'll ask
Yeah.
this last question and then I'll close us up and then I'll actually hand it over to you to punny us and then we can just end the session for those that are here and then we can go on with the thing.
Mahalo makai.
Awesome. All right. So I have one last question. In regards to finding strength in one's culture, what if the person's trauma originated from their own culture, or if they associate their abuse with their culture? Any thoughts on how to reconcile that?
Ooh, yeah. Which can totally happen for sure.
Mhm.
Um, and that's when lines are crossed and the way in which we uphold ourselves as practitioners or people of the culture, right? Kind of cross over that line. Um, it's acknowledging it, of course. Um, and it kind of goes and like that's an interesting question because it's like, is it a specific person, right, where that trauma is coming from, or is it from like a group of people, like I don't know the context in which it's coming from, but of course, speaking any person, right? It's really trying to find that space that you do feel safe in. If it starts off with one person, and this is why I'm going to emphasize Pilina, um, and it doesn't have to be from the culture, yeah. Um, Wherever you find safety, or where safety somehow finds you, yeah. Um, that could be the start of expanding that safety space for you. If that's I know it's gonna take some trust, um, some time to really trust and build that rapport with anyone after that kind of traumatic experience. But I guess that's why Pilina's coming to mind. It's like really knowing the people that you're relating with, knowing what you're doing with them. When things start to feel like they're being crossed over, then you always have that opportunity to step back and be like, no, that's not going to happen today for me. And knowing who are the people in your life that you can trust, yeah. Um, Building that circle of people, that truly are in that space of aloha for you. And it doesn't necessarily have to come from the culture itself, you know. There's a lot of people that do find um, ways to release traumas and all of that outside of their own culture, you know. Um, it's unfortunate that things do happen that way, you know. I'm not sure if I'm answering the question because it kind of depends on the actual situation. And I don't know if anything else comes up for Kea in terms of that. Um, no, yeah,
Kale, you're
no.
muted. Kale. I know you get knowledge. I just feel like you're muted right now.
Oh,
Oh,
uh-oh. How come?
oh no.
Oh, that's odd, yeah. No.
Yeah. Maybe, Kale, we can, I think maybe are you trying to find the Zoom on the bottom? Okay, what we'll do is because I think maybe the slide is kind of the slide deck
Oh,
maybe
hiding it.
because I'm trying to find it. Yeah, no, we totally got you. Let me see. I'm actually gonna see if maybe I can stop your participation sharing. So maybe now can you see you've
Thank
got
you.
you're welcome. That's what we're
Lord have
here.
mercy.
That's
I'm
really
like,
cool.
where
Cool.
is it? It disappears and then
Yeah.
it'll flash on my screen, color my I did just want to quickly add that when that question reminds me of when abuse happens in religious institutions, how that can shake the foundation of someone's spiritual or idea of belief and faith in that. It's kind of similar when abuse happens in a cultural setting. It's there's it's like Dolly was saying, I do believe it is a situational thing and it's a Polina thing. It's also knowing that the culture itself isn't what was abusive, it was individuals, and that there are still really healing components outside of that that is that you can one could turn to, that we don't it doesn't have to encompass the whole identity of the abuse or be that thing that resonates with the abuse. Because I have had people that were abused in religious institutions and it really shook their foundation of spirituality, and but they still were able to find that because they just rerouted it, rediscovered it in a different identity, in a different way that was more healing than previously thought of, and I think that culture can kind of be a similar way. Like I know uh that and in my own family, sexual abuse is very pervasive. Um and it got tied up in culture and culture norms, like when you go to a party you have to go and kiss all the uncle aunties, and you like having to be forced to kiss the person abusing you was definitely a trigger, I know, for a lot of people. And now in my own children, I don't make them do that. I refuse. I'm like, they have autonomy, they don't want to kiss you, that's not disrespectful, that's just them trusting that in their own little know that they don't like kiss you, and that's fine. And but switching it and changing it, like I did have that whole discussion with somebody, and I'm like, what I do is I hold my babies and I go and I honey that person, and I tell my child, you can wave, fist bump. And so that kind of like, just we can change it. It's not stagnant, it's ever growing and evolving. And we can make it healthier. If the component itself that was cultural is painful and part of the abuse, we can change that. You know what I mean? It's not rigid.
Yeah.
So thank you, ladies. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm gonna close. I'm just gonna do my last mana'o, and then I'm gonna hand it over to Kia to close us out, and then wishing everybody a great Aloha Friday. So for those that are still on, I just want to echo big mahalo piha to the two of you for being our trainers today. Few reminders, if you folks are interested in earning or receiving your CEs, please complete the evaluation survey that will be emailed in the Mahalo email shortly after this training. We will also make sure to include both Dali and Keli'i's contact information if you folks want to connect beyond this webinar and continue on these really important conversations. For those, please, after you complete your certificate, will be emailed to you folks no later than November 14th. And again, mahalo nui to everybody for joining us. And hope that you join us for next week's, our final session. And okay, and thank you again. So Kelly, yeah, I will hand it over to you to close us out.
I was actually gonna, should I pull tag you, Dolly? Did you want to Oli us out?
Oh, sure.
Or
Yes. I would try.
okay. I had a feeling she wanted to.
Oh, the morning time for me and my Leo is yeah, 50-50 sometimes.
Well, if
But
you want, I
hey,
can do it too. But I just
I'll
I was
try.
gonna put the floor out. Yeah.
I'll do it. What you wanna do Okawola, maybe? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That'd be a good
Okay. We
one,
can
yeah?
Oli together. Yeah. This Oli
Yeah.
is Pule Ola Loihi, and it's a Pule for long life, and it calls for us to have vitality and deep resonating health until our eyes are blurry like the rat and our bodies are bent like the lauhala leaf. So yeah.
Yeah. And just so people kind of understand, for those of you that are still on, when we say we're gonna ho'opau or ho'oku'u, like we're gonna like close, it doesn't mean we're closed. Like it means kind of like we're completing this, but it still goes on. So whatever the learning still goes forward. I guess, sometimes we think open, close, and then it's pow, right? Oh, this is not pow. There's so much more to
Not
learn
Paul. Not Paul.
and
Yeah.
do. This is more like, okay, it's gonna go forward, yeah.
Lele Vale.
Um, yeah, Lele Valley, that's the one. It goes off like that. Okay. Makakao po.
Ay.
Oh. O kaulai
Ai
ke
ke
akua
aku e
e
nana
nana mai ka
kau
mau
mau
pula
ula
pula e ula kaniko ahaua ka iole apalalau hala akau i ka puane ane alai alave aku oe au i ke aloha ke ae. Oh, with that, 2 claps.
Mahalo
And we
nui,
send it
mahalo
off.
oko, mahalo
Woohoo!
maka.
Mahalo, Oko.
Mahalo nui,
You guys
everybody.
are awesome. Mahalo.
Today.
Mahalo. Thank you, Maka.